welcome to 9-4 Radio. I believe this is the last episode before we start getting into the actual habits of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, written by Stephen Covey lots of years ago, cornerstone of 9-4 coaching's philosophies and all that good stuff. I want to extend that conversation I had with efficiency and effectiveness into resources. So this is going to be a little bit of an extension of that efficiency versus effectiveness when it comes to resources. So Stephen talks about 3 general resources. You got physical, or 3 assets. So physical, financial, and human. So physical, you're talking about a lawnmower, right? Financials, obviously money. And human resources are the people that you're working with, right? And you want to balance those resources, what they're capable of producing, versus what you ask them to produce, right? And why that's important. So if you're in charge of people, or if you ever plan on being in charge of people, this is a fantastic, this is a really good concept to wrap your head around. And like Stephen had talked about in the book, you want to create a balance. You don't want to have such a pristine piece of equipment or make sure your people are so rested that they're not being challenged. But you don't want to use them at their 100% production capacity. You don't want to have them redline forever, right? We are cyclical, right? We're cyclical beings. And equipment needs to be maintained. And if you have money, and you got to spend it to make it, but you got to make sure that you can afford what you're spending, right? And so with that, a couple techniques or a couple things to think about, especially with human resources. Work-rest cycles. Figuring out when you need to have all hands on deck. When really sit down and think about, okay, look at a long-term calendar, especially if you're in charge of people. It's your job. I will just say that, it is your job to plan. If you are in charge of people at all, if you are in business, if you are in charge of people, you got a long-term plan. That's non-negotiable. So you need to sit down and really look at that calendar and okay, when do I need everybody? When do I need to have 100% production capacity? We're just gonna get after it. And then back plan from there. So plan around the big rocks, right? So I need to have everybody 4 times a year, because you can't run at 100% for an entire year, right? You have to high, low, operational tempo, all that good stuff. Figure out when you need everybody, and then plan in work and rest cycles. So you're going to need people to be rested before you need everybody, and then you're going to have to give them a little bit of a break after all that work. So work rest cycles are super important, and then also that's a technique. Long-term planning, that's a technique. Asking them, asking your people, what are your sacred cows? What are parts of the year that that are dependent on that time of the year where you need to go fill your cup with whatever you got going on? Establishing that, that's a fantastic way to balance that human resource, because there are going to be times when you have to challenge your people, and knowing that you have to challenge them, you have to also give them a break. And here's the why behind it. Stephen talks about the fact that you can buy people's work. You can buy their physical labor, but you can't buy their creativity, and you can't buy their loyalty. if you run your people ragged, they're going to leave. They're going to turn into robots, or they're going to leave. Either way, that's a loss. As human beings, we need to feel empowered, and we need some white space in our calendars to foster that, right? We need to do the things that bring us joy, that fill our cup, in order to be creative. You know, I mean, if you're running at 100% all the time, you don't have time to be creative. You're just auto mode. You're just autopilot, checking all the boxes, making it happen. You're not effective, right? You're just not. And the very first opportunity someone has to leave potentially at a pay cut, they'll leave, no doubt. So it's super important to honor your resources. You need to challenge them. You have got to get the job done, no question. But you have also got to know that you got to throttle down every once in a while. So, really good talk on resources, work-rest cycles, be a planner, take care of your people, take care of your equipment. Maintenance is always ongoing. And then we'll catch you next time. Thanks.